Welcome to Performance Mesh. My name is John O'Neill. I'm here with my co-host Eric Manis for our 7th episode of the podcast. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm great, John. I'm fresh off a vacation with the missus. Had spent 4 days in Kennebunkport, Maine. I'm fully recharged and I'm ready to go.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kennebunkport is known for producing strength coaches, right?
I did a Google search and I said popular strength coaches from Kennebunkport, and I think you know somebody that may have graduated.
I believe the Eric Cressey's from Kennebunkport. It's the Bushes, the Cressey's. I don't really know anyone else from there, but some pretty known people.
It's an interesting place to grow up. There's a lot of stuff to do. You can go whale watching. You can, go. We went on a boat and saw like a bunch of stuff. There's lots of lobster, lots of overpriced lobster.
Yeah,
I know. $30 for a sandwich this big.
We come into these pods, saying, "Oh yeah, it's the mini episode, 20 to 30 minutes." But then you say things like this, and you got a bunch of questions out of me already. So, one, have you ever been whale watching?
Yes, I went in Santa Barbara, California, and I did not see a whale.
Okay. So I think I would enjoy whale watching. Amy, my fiance, has been before and is talking about going again this fall, and I want in. I want to see a whale.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the Jersey Shore right now. We're getting like a lot of wildlife that hasn't been here before. We're getting like dolphins were like kind of a rare sighting. You can see a dolphin like almost every single day right now. In Seabright Beach.
Huh. I had no idea.
Crazy.
I had no idea. You may have piqued my interest in the beach a little more than normally.
Yeah. Imagine if you could see some dolphins. That would make it.
I would definitely be more interested. The other follow-up I have is, do you like lobster?
Yeah, it's okay. It's very overrated, but
yeah.
I don't like the process. I'm completely out on like the cracking and like getting the meat out. So a lobster roll is good. It's a sandwich. It's pretty good. But I mean, I had one. It cost $35, and I was out after that.
I think anytime you have to work a lot at the dinner table, like it's a little much.
Yeah, I'm lower on that end. It's got to be really good, and it's not that good.
Yeah. Like even like I like steak, but if the steak is really hard to cut and to chew, it really kills the experience.
Yeah, I'm a fillet guy. I like the filet mignon, and that might go against. I know traditional steak eaters would say like that's a crazy take, but it's easy to eat, and that's what I'm looking for.
I had a great prime rib at River Palm Terrace in Fair Lawn, New Jersey over the weekend. It's excellent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
That's steak country.
Yeah.
County steak country.
They know what they're doing out there.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Johnny, you saw a childhood hero get his number retired this week. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Paul O'Neill, my favorite player growing up. Obviously we have the same last name, so that was what first piqued my interest around the age of 5 or 6. And then, it turns out he was really the heart and soul of those Yankees teams. Hit third, made 5 All-Star games, won a batting title in there. Was also like the emotional leader of the team in terms of the intensity that he brought. So always really liked him as a kid. And then since 2002, he's been a broadcaster for the Yes Network. So he's actually been broadcasting for 20 years. It seems like,
oh my God.
Yeah, when he's on the broadcast, it's his 21st season. So it's like, kind of recent player, Paul O'Neill, but it's not. It's kind of like when we were kids. He's like almost. So here's a crazy fact for you. You remember Jim Cott, the broadcaster?
Yeah, I know who it is, but I wouldn't be. If he was down the street,
Right.
I wouldn't know.
So Jim Cott, I remember as a kid. So Jim Cott did Yankee games for years, right? He was like the second guy, or one of the analysts. So Jim Cott, when I first started following baseball, was like in his late 50s as kind of the old man on the broadcast. Paul O'Neill is that now to young kids.
Yeah, it looks like he has like a lot of grandchildren.
Yeah, he had multiple grandchildren there, but it was very cool. Mariano Rivera was there, Jorge Posada, Bernie, Tino. So, all the greats that we grew up watching.
Oh, unbelievable. Do you have a favorite Paul O'Neill moment?
That's a good question. I don't know about singular moment. I will say, I'll correct that. I do remember Game 5 of the '01 World Series when the fans were chanting his name for the whole ninth inning because it was his potential last inning in Yankee Stadium. They wound up playing 2 more innings that game, but in that same game, Tino Martinez hits a home run to tie the game. Sorry, the night before, Tino Martinez hit a home run to tie the game in the ninth to send it to extras, and Paul O'Neill's basically jumping around second base, going nuts with the fans. That's probably the moment. Those combo moments.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrific stuff.
But yeah, my dog's named after Paul O'Neill. So yeah.
Your dog's name is Paul O'Neill.
His name is Paul O'Neill. Yeah.
It should be maybe he should be like the second or something like that, just so that nobody gets confused.
That's true. They are pretty similar. They are pretty similar. So what are we talking about today? Mailbag episode. We want to answer the questions that the folks have, right? So what is of the questions we got, and I let you pick this one in terms of I know this is right up your alley. What was your favorite question?
So I want to. This is going to be a multi-episode one. It took on so much. It got the wheels rolling, if you will. So just me and you probably we deal with a lot of different situations, right? And we talked about it last pod that, and this is no disrespect to your facility, right? But you kind of live in a Disney World type of environment, right? There are a lot of factors going in your way to be successful, right? You have unlimited time, you have great resources, great equipment. You can talk to we talk to the pitching coach that you work alongside every day, and there are high schools across the country that are the opposite of that, right? They have shitty equipment. They have 50 kids in the facility or in the weight room, and the coaches that don't have a ton of experience running a program. So I thought it would be cool if me and you just kind of look to solve that problem of a heavy populated weight room with not great equipment. What would we do in that environment?
Yeah, cool. Let's tackle it. I mean, I obviously have some group experience. Majority of it, I was thinking about this when you first mentioned ahead of time today that this is what we're probably going to go with. They're thinking I'm admittedly not experienced in 1 on 40, 1 on 50, right? I think you have a little bit experience with that. Am I right?
Yeah. So so for probably 2 or 3 years, one of them, the head coach got completely behind me. The head coach is a good friend of mine. I went to the team probably 3 days a week for 6 months. And I was an assistant coach. The kids really kind of bought into what we were doing. I was on the sidelines. We had a great experience. The facility was pretty big. We definitely had enough space. The next year, things got mixed up a little bit. Another team got involved, and it was a disaster. It was 1 on 80, and I was looking to get out of there after that. I had no interest in going back to that. So I've had really honestly one of the best experiences of my coaching career was training the Seton Hall Prep lacrosse team. And then it wasn't so great the year after. It's just it might have been just the kids weren't fully into it. Maybe I just didn't do a good job of explaining things, but it just didn't go as well as I would hoped the following years.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, most of my group experience is in the 1 on, we'll use the bigger numbers, 15 to 20. So there's still obviously some planning there's still obviously a decent amount of planning. And it's one of those things where, at least to me, my initial thought is in a semi-private or private model, you can veer from the plan. At least let's start private. So the exact opposite. You can veer from the plan pretty quickly. if it's not going well, and also you don't need to put that much time into like setting up where equipment is, like especially in semi-private, the people just go get it themselves. In private, you're right there with the person, and if anything, like equipment setup is like your built-in rest time. But in a group setting, like there's, for every hour of coaching groups, there's probably pretty close to an hour of planning the group, right?
Yeah, and you quickly find out if you're unprepared in that time, and you're in trouble if you are.
Yep. Or if you haven't figured out like the rotation of where people are going after the lift, if the rotation like creates a bottleneck in the gym, that's a mess. I've definitely been there, and it's awkward because the kids know it at the same time that you do. They don't, like, you might think, oh, I'm going to see this before kids know, like they know exactly.
We got 15 kids at the dip station.
Yeah.
What do we do, coach?
So walk me through your thought process on training large groups.
Okay, so in the great experience that I had, I do think that some level of individualization is required in running a good program, right? Like, I think it is inappropriate when one program is being run for everybody, and you're like, okay, well, like how do we execute that? So what I did when, like, almost 10 years ago at this point, we set it up. There was a level 1, 2, and 3. So we had our underclassmen were on basically a dumbbell program until they proved they were strong enough to touch a barbell. We had actually, it was really only beginners, and I shouldn't say there was 3 levels. There was just a beginners and an experienced guys program, and the only difference on paper, the template was the same. We just had all of like the younger kids using dumbbells for all of their stuff, and all the experienced kids were using barbells for all their stuff.
Now
that was just one of the things that I think that, like, right off the bat, I think that there should be some level of like, or the younger kids need a little bit different program than the older kids who are a little more mature and have a little bit more muscle, a little more time in the weight room.
I think this is something we talk a lot about staff here. Like, I do think it is important to have some degree of strength standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, whether you think of it as like graduation from one thing to another, or just progression from one thing to another. But I'll give a couple numbers, and I want to hear your thoughts on agree or disagree, and numbers that you use to progress people. But this is the same question whether it's in a group or in a private or semi-private model. So at what point does a kid start using a bar to squat? At what point do they start going to the trap bar deadlift, et cetera? So in terms of, like, I'll start with the latter. In terms of it going from a kettlebell to a trap bar deadlift, to me, it's always been hit the heaviest kettlebell in the gym for a set of 8 to 10. And I still do that in programming. I think I put that in a program today that I wrote for like 12, 13, 14-year-olds. Now, at the high school level, most of your kids are going to get that pretty quickly, but that's okay. So what? You spend a week or 2 doing that. Like, you make sure technique's good before they get there. For us right now, I think it's a 44 kilogram kettlebell. It might be a 40. I think it's a 44. But if you have kettlebells in the gym, hit the heaviest one for a set of 10 before you move on to a trap bar. So then by the time that you come to the trap bar, like 48 kilogram kettlebell or 44 kilogram kettlebell is actually kind of harder to do than 135 on a trap bar. And so that it kind of allows you to skip the step of like, oh, we're going to put 25s on the trap bar. And so that to me has always been valuable. And so that's one. The second one, talk with squat. It's always been one of 2 things. So either you can hit like above a 50 on a goblet squat for a full set before you go to a bar for like a safety bar or front squat. Usually safety bar first if you have them for us, because we have 45-pound safety bars. Or when grip becomes a limiting factor. I'm okay with grip being a limiting factor sometimes, because I think that helps you hone in technique. But I don't want it to be like, all right, this kid just like can't get the weight into position.
Yeah. I'm on like both ends recently. Like, I don't know why, but like sometimes I just let a kid do a trap bar, and like it's kind of stupid. Like the times where I just took the step of just, all right, you need to do the kettlebell and own it for like a couple sets. It's always gone better.
And then, but on the other hand, like I had a kid who's just like very physically immature, just couldn't hold a 75-pound dumbbell here. And then I was like, all right, let's just try Zercher squatting. And he like has been a ton better at that exercise and has made a lot more progress. So it's like have your standards, but don't be like stubborn all the time, right?
Totally, yeah. And I think that's why I hesitated with the squat one, because that number might be different for different people, like, or, depending on age, size, training age, et cetera. Like for some kids, it might be a 40 or 45 where they start to struggle holding it. Some kids might easily be able to hold a 60, and it's like, all right, let's just finish 4 weeks doing it this way, because you're on week 3 at this point already. So those are ones that come to mind. Other ones in our model right now that I use, being able to hit a Viking press with a 45 on it before you get any kind of landmine. Viking press is a 2-arm landmine. It's significantly easier. And that's not for, I just mean for kids in terms of like natural progressions. And I think it's really valuable to learn how to stabilize that before you switch to a 1-arm variation. Being able to dumbbell bench the 60s or greater before we start switching it into different like 1-arm, et cetera, variations. For sets of 8, 10, 6, 8, 10, like normal length sets, or alternating, or any other variation you want. So those are just a couple that come to mind. But yeah, what are your thoughts on like your progressions within that, and we can relate it back to a group model.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking like, and I'm going to toss this back to you, but what I always think like, what does a really good athlete able to do, right? So to me, like just adding on to what you're saying, like I think that like every kid should be able to do like 5 chin-ups. So like reverse engineering, or like taking that as our like landmark, like we should be working towards that. Like all the kids who are pretty successful or pretty athletic, they should be able to do that. Be able to bang out like 10 really good push-ups without your back really arched is another thing. Like, okay, you have really good control you have pretty good upper body strength, but even more, you have really good control of your center, right? Your torso. Being able to like split squat, maybe like your body weight in your hands with dumbbells. Again, like you're pretty strong if you're able to do that. So like, maybe we can just go back and forth on like, what are like movements that we want to be able to see kids be able to do in this program?
Yeah, and so I think you hit those on the head. I don't know if I go dumbbell, body weight in each hand. I haven't necessarily thought of it that way. I've kind of thought of
like
it
total body weight or whatever. I just throw a number out, but like being able to split squat like a good amount of weight, like, okay, that kid's really strong.
Yeah, so like being able, and so I've definitely made the mistake of going like SSB split squat too early for kids, et cetera. Like you said, I think the number is probably at least a quarter body weight in each hand before you consider it, and it's probably somewhere between a quarter and a half body weight in each hand on a split squat. To me, it's like a quarter body weight in each hand on a split squat before you go to Bulgarian, if you wanted like a nice mathematical way of doing it, and regular split squat before Bulgarian. The push-up number makes total sense to me. Sometimes I think some kids just like, I kind of hate really inclined push-ups. I think they're too different from a regular push-up. So if we're gonna do a hands elevated push-up, it's gonna be like relatively low. Like it's gonna be like elevated where the bar height you're using like isn't at your waist height. It's like at your knee height. So it's like a little easier, but it's not so far easier, because I felt like in the past when we went like high incline push-ups or like waist height elevated push-ups, it was still so far removed. So to me, that person just gets isometric holds in a tall plank position, tall plank at some part of the program, a prone bridge in some part of the program, like a dumbbell bench or a dumbbell floor press in another part of the program, and you work on that for like a month, and then come back to an elevated push-up. I don't
think you're fine. I think you got it after that,
Yeah. And like then you come back to elevated push-up at like maybe mid-thigh height or knee height or below. And then because then it's actually close. It's not like this abstract, where do I put my body in space? So those things on a push-up, on the chin-up or pull-up, I usually start people with like some kind of hanging if they can't do it. And this is kind of against the grain in the field, like not loving really elevated push-ups. I don't really like banded chin-ups. I think they generally
they're not great.
I don't think they progress as nicely as people think they do, because people just like develop these like false strategies of how to get in and out of the bottom. And so I would much rather, and not to say I won't use them, but if I do, it'll be like very supplementary. It won't be like the go-to. So to me, it's like, let's just do some hanging. I'll usually start people with like like a set is like 2 or 3 by 10 seconds. So 10-second hang, let go, repeat until you do 2 or 3. Then for a set, you build up to like 20 to 30 seconds, and then you work on like actually jumping up, getting to the top, controlling eccentric, and then doing some more isometric eccentric, and then getting eventually to a concentric. But to me, just like do a lat pull down, I think are some of our, in periods of the past, at least the way I was taught in this field, we're so like anti like some stuff that looked like bodybuilding, but like a lat pull down, if you can't do a lat pull down well, you have absolutely no shot at a pull up or
No chance.
So I've been using a decent amount of lat pull downs with younger kids. We have like a neutral grip lat pull down handle, which I requested that we get like earlier this summer, because I had a bunch of kids that I wanted to use it with, which is awesome. So I'd highly recommend one of those if you have the ability to do it in your facility, because it just puts kids in a good position. And there's no like, hey, put the bar here, or try to figure out exactly what angle the bar is on. Just be here and pull it straight down, and just get used to that. Or pull it straight down right in front of your face. So yeah, those are like the pull up. You mentioned so the big rocks: pull up, split squat, push up, some kind of press, some kind of hinge, some kind of squat, probably some kind of lunge. But I don't have any like exact standards with that lunge. It's kind of like the same as squat or split squat, like just load it up and then when grip's a limiting factor, switch to a bar.
Yeah. So like we have our, basic stuff, like we want to push, pull, hinge, squat, be in some kind of split stance, half kneeling variation. And then like athletic stuff, I think we just like defer to like Lee Tapp's like 7 foundational movements of like acceleration, max velocity, shuffle, lateral run, retreating, jumping, and that's pretty much it. Is that 7?
I'm not sure if that was 7. It's max, it's top speed, acceleration, shuffle, crossover, lateral run step, retreating, back pedal, and jumping. I'm not sure which one you skipped, if you skipped one.
1, 2, 3, 4. Back pedal.
Yeah, because there's two linear, 2 lateral,
jump,
2 backwards, and then 1 vertical.
Yeah, that's it. 1, 2. Yep, we got it.
But yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't necessarily do those in equal amounts. I'll say that I do. I do a lot more straight ahead stuff in our model because it's easier to coach. In our model, it's easier to program. I find that like some lateral or change of direction stuff, just program for straight sets and reps. Just the constraints are too different. Like the intent you get on like 3 sets of 4 on this shuffle versus like, hey, I'm gonna have you shuffle reacting to something is so wildly different that I'm gonna try to make that stuff reactive whenever I can. So if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that like and I think that even like Lee would say, you kind of just like needed to look a certain way like once or twice, and maybe for like a week, and then I think he would even say like, all right, now go do things that are closer to the sport and game.
I think it makes total sense. So yeah, like you mentioned, like what do really good athletes do, or what can they do? Like, and if you're in a group setting, just back pedal from the top of like what do we want them to be able to do? Have a beginner and advanced model, at least where you have a progression and a regression. If your regressions should be parts of the whole. And so I mentioned like the push-up one, instead of just maybe doing a worse push-up variation, sprinkle in parts of the whole. So do like isometrics and stuff that works on those muscle groups, and then come back to it. You don't necessarily have to make the regression the exact same exercise, right? I actually don't think, like, if you're in a high school weight room and you have a leg press and you have kids who can't really squat, like, have them goblet squat and use a leg press, and they'll get a lot better at squatting than they will at doing really bad back squats over and over and again.
Yeah, and I think that's just like what I see, like from the get-go, is that like there's just a lot of kids who are just doing things that they're trying to do things that they can't do.
Yep.
And they're just like they're physiologically not ready to do, and then movement wise they can't do. So just laying a foundation of all these good things and then doing it a lot is the mesh performance high school way.
I think so. Just as a whole in programming, so we write our programs in 4-week blocks, just the way our model is set up. If you have to like really stringently coach technique come weeks 3 and 4, you chose the wrong exercises. Like that's on you. The first week is on the athlete. In terms of like the first week, it's like, all right, like you may have picked a really good exercise, but it takes them a week to learn. The second week is a combo. So now it's like, can you help them pick the right weights that helps them learn it better and push themselves? But if you get to week 3 and they still can't do something technically, that's on you. You either can't coach it, or your model can't coach it, or you pick the wrong thing. That's the way I look at it, because you should have, at least in a 4-week block, you should have at least 3 weeks that are centered on output on an exercise, not just on technique learning. There's the occasional outliers where it's something like, all right, technique wise, I really need this person to learn this for whatever reason, and you're going to string it out for longer. But if that's your whole program, like you're going to miss out on so much. Like you chase output and chase adaptation, non-motor skill related adaptation, or non-motor skill learning adaptation for a majority of your program, versus like just like I think, like big picture, I think if you're coaching technique on something 4 weeks in and that's the limiting factor, so it's somebody having output, it's probably the wrong exercise, or it's the big limiting factor. I don't mean little tweaks or changing a grip width or stance width or changing an intent or a cue. I mean like they really just like can't do it, and they can't put weight on the bar, can't put force on the ground in that movement.
For some reason, like I fell in love with dumbbell rows. And like when you think about it, it's like it's difficult for me, like not a lot of people do a dumbbell row that well. Yeah. And I just looked across the weight room at the group programs I was running, and I was like, we suck at doing dumbbell rows. Just like I was not good at coaching it, and they were not good at executing it. So we just like started doing chest supported rows, Terex rows, cable rows, and we're fine now. You know, we're doing a good job. Yeah. But like for some reason, dumbbell rows weren't rocking at Aspire Fitness.
Yep. Yeah. Just like rows or something, like just put a lot of constraints on it, and like you're not gonna lose athleticism because you're like, oh, you're seated on a row. You're not going to become less athletic than the person who's standing on a row. Yeah,
they asked the batter asked the pitcher, did you do how's your dumbbell row? What'd you dumbbell row this week? And if it's not enough, it's an automatic home run.
Speaking of some sports stuff, like we're pretty far into performance mesh to only have covered. We had a little discussion on lobsters and whale watching and whatnot early, but we're pretty far in on just straight content. Like we're getting serious.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a serious podcast for non-serious people.
We do take our job seriously, like we say, but yes. Our jobs are not the most serious job in the world. There's a big clarification. No. So what I want to do for the top 5 today, and I think we'll probably end with this today as the last segment, and tomorrow, or our next pod, which we're actually shooting tomorrow, we're going to pick up right where we left off, and talk about the same concepts. But so I wanted to find a top 5 that was right up your alley. Okay.
Okay.
But as I started to rank them, I decided I'm not an expert in this category. Okay. I would say I'm knowledgeable in this category, but I'm not an expert in ranking these people or in
Mhm.
ranking within this category. But I think you might be. Okay. So I Googled lists within it, and I found an article from NJ.com from
Wow.
2021, April 2021, so within the last year and a half. It was just after Zach Wilson was drafted. And it is them ranking all of the Jets starting quarterbacks since Joe Namath. Okay.
Oh my God.
So obviously we're not going to go through all of them, although that would be a fun game to see how many you can name. And there
I
are
wouldn't do that well with Namath. I think I could do. I repeated the one we did with Jordan. I think it was like around the early 2000s. I did fairly well on that one.
yeah, so I think
I'm
you
just
go.
naming them.
So like I'll give you some names that are so I'm gonna quiz you on the top 5 that are here, okay? But I'm gonna
Okay.
give you some names later on. So like there's 34 of them. 32 is Greg McElroy, okay?
Yeah.
27
Alabama national champ.
27 is Bryce Petty.
Oh, horrible. Baylor. Out of Baylor, he had high hopes and didn't live up to them.
24 is Glenn Foley. Remember Glenn Foley?
Yeah, did he play in the 90s?
Yeah, so the first football game I ever went to was a Jets Ravens preseason game in 1998. I think the Jets lost 33-0. I should look this up, but I think they lost 33-0.
I'd be surprised if you remembered that.
But I remember it was the first NFL game I was at preseason. We were one of very few people that stayed to the end because I really wanted to stay to see what happened because I didn't really realize at the time how much of a joke preseason football was. To me, it was like you got
Yeah,
to
this
stay
is
for
it.
it. And I was 7 at the time, but Vinny Testaverde started, okay, and then Glenn Foley came in as the backup because Testaverde was replacing Foley, and fans were not that happy about it. And I remember the fans going nuts when Glenn Foley came in, like really happy for it, really happy. And that was like
Oh wow.
the shining moment of that game for the Jets, like Glenn Foley coming in and the fans giving him a standing ovation.
Wow.
And
so Testaverde replaced Glenn Foley as a starter, huh?
yeah. But
Yeah,
that's
I would say I became a Jets fan like a little bit after that.
okay. Yeah.
But I know familiar.
That was my first year following football. I'll give you 2 more names that ring a bell here. So 17 on this list is Michael Vick. Okay, he started 3 games for the Jets in 2014.
He was one of the guys I forgot on the recall. Forgot that he played for the Jets.
When I was looking at this list, I was like, wow, I do not remember that at all. Do not remember that at all. And number 14 is on ESPN Radio now, or has been in the past. Ray Lucas.
Ray Lucas went in for Testaverde. Testaverde like broke his femur in the first game.
Yeah. Yep. Did he break his femur?
They were like
tear his Achilles. What did he do?
He did something where he's first game he was like out for the season, and I just remember there was a commercial and he had a cast that was full his entire leg, and I was like he's shooting commercials like you really made the best of a bad situation.
So Halloween, whatever, 1999. That's probably 2nd or 3rd grade. I think I was 2nd grade. I was Vinny Testaverde for Halloween because I had a Vinny Testaverde jersey.
Wow.
And I put like a fake cast on my leg, and that was my costume.
Oh my God. Very satirical.
Yeah.
Very satirical at a young age.
One of the last non-Redskins jerseys I ever wore, Vinny Testaverde. I also had a Peyton Manning jersey around that time. Peyton Manning Colts jersey.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, 2 good jerseys.
All right, so here you go. So I want you to try to guess the top 5 they have listed here.
Okay, so it's top 5 since Joe Namath.
So Joe Namath does not count. Yeah.
And this is the top 5 Jets quarterbacks.
Jets starting quarterbacks. So not necessarily the top 5 careers, like Michael Vick, and you could argue Joe Flacco and some of these other guys have had better careers than these guys. But it's their top 5 Jets careers.
So How about Testaverde?
Number 1.
They put him at number 1.
Yep. And they not only put him at number 1, he's listed as the obvious choice for the number 1 spot.
That might be how pathetic the list is, though,
No,
right?
the list is bad. That's why I felt like I wasn't an expert in this category, and I'm going off somebody else's list.
How about Mark Sanchez?
Number 4.
You could argue he had a bigger impact on the Jets than Testaverde did. He went to back-to-back.
Testaverde. So I think the argument is Testaverde went to 1 championship game, and
he had significantly better numbers.
And he was significantly a bigger piece of that team. And if he hadn't gotten hurt the next year, they were probably like Super Bowl contenders going into that next year.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
So I definitely have seen one more of these guys play. The other 2 I've heard of as like known Jets names.
Chad Pennington.
Chad Pennington's number 2. I always like Chad Pennington. Don't know why. It seemed like a good guy. Could be wrong.
I think he was a great guy. I mean, I think he was a good. Yeah, he was a good. I think that if he had a good strength coach who knew how to handle a shoulder, he would have probably lasted a lot longer.
I remember a game.
He probably wasn't doing his cable external rotations, and then it caught up to him.
That was like the most, that period, like 02 through like 07 was like the most I was ever into football. So I feel like that was like right in his prime. Like he was good. He was a good quarterback. They made the playoffs 3 times with him.
I was at a game where Jets Colts with Peyton Manning, and the Jets beat them like 41-0 in the playoffs. I
remember that game.
Embarrassed the Colts.
I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Part of Peyton Manning's Colts legacy, when he was known as like the guy who couldn't win a big game, it wasn't just that, like, because they wound up beating the Bears in the Super Bowl in probably 07 or so, 06, 07, around there, maybe 08. But it wasn't just that he didn't win the big game. It was that they, for several years in a row, got absolutely crushed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those, like, they would lose playoff games by 3-4 touchdowns.
They just didn't show up.
Yeah, like multiple of those years, they wouldn't even compete. I think it was 06, because 06 it was finally the year where they beat the Patriots. They beat the Patriots in the championship game to go to the Super Bowl, because then the Patriots the next year came back with this like loaded roster.
Mm-hmm.
But like that 2000 to 2005 Peyton Manning run is like year after year just getting smoked in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
You got two Jets left.
Okay. I can't think of the guy's name right now. I know he was in the Marino and Elway draft. I know he made a Pro Bowl too.
Ken O'Brien.
Ken O'Brien. Yeah, I just couldn't. I knew it when he first started talking about it. It lost my mind. Ken O'Brien. They picked him over Marino. But he made a Pro Bowl. I mean, that's pretty good. What number was he?
He's number 3. He's the Jet starter for 10 years, 50-55 record with the team. They reached the playoffs 3 times with him. So not terrible. 10 years started in the NFL, no joke. And the next guy was actually the guy who Ken O'Brien replaced, whose name is Richard Todd.
Yeah.
And I've heard the name.
I've heard the name, but I wouldn't have guessed that.
He was a starter for 8 years. I feel like back then, though, like, if you were like just okay as a starting quarterback in the NFL, you probably had your job for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, even the rookies like didn't really play that much, right?
Yeah,
like I think Chad Pennington didn't play for like 3 or 4 years before he actually started playing. He was a backup.
Pennington started playing his second year, but not all the time.
The second year.
It looks like his third year he became a starter. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
imagine that, like waiting 3 years.
Famously, Steve Young had to wait 4 behind Joe Montana.
Imagine
Aaron Rodgers is probably the last great quarterback to not play early in his career. Like, he waited 3 years behind Brett Favre.
Yeah. He was like, the Packers really pulled something. They got rid of their legend because they knew they had the next one right in the bag, huh?
So next week, or sorry, no, not next week. Next episode, we're going through Redskins quarterbacks, and I promise to not look any of them up ahead of time. But you got to quiz
We're
me
gonna
on
go.
them.
You're gonna go through them.
Yeah, you got to quiz me on them in some way, and I won't look any of them up between now and then.
Wow. How about on the list? Where was Kellen Clemens on the Jets list? Was he on there?
He's definitely on there because everyone who started a game for the Jets since like 1970. Geno Smith at number 13, number 12. Wow.
He. I tell you what, he didn't get punched in the face over a airplane ticket. He probably could have led the Jets to the playoffs.
Did Kellen Clemens definitely start the game?
I don't know. I know he was a second-round pick. I think that he did. I think he might have played one game.
So he probably played at some point, but he's not on this list, which I think it's all the starters because they have Greg McElroy on it. And Greg McElroy was 0-1 as a starter.
I watched the Greg McElroy game. It was a bad game.
Yeah.
I think that it might have been against like Trevor Siemian. He broke his leg in the one game he played.
Yeah, just some bad quarterbacks there. Bubby Brister.
I don't know. I've never heard of him.
Started 4 games in 1995.
Bubby Brister.
Yeah, he started for the Broncos 1 year, like after Elway. I remember. That's why I know the name.
Bobby Brister. How could you forget it? Once you heard it.
And he was with Terrell Davis. He was like in between Elway and Jake Plummer.
Unbelievable
Right.
stuff. Thanks for taking me down memory lane on that one, Johnny.
Hey, I'm ready for the Washington list. You got to bring it tomorrow.
Top 5. What are you going? What years do you want to go back to?
Hey, you bring any era, and I'll bring any era. I'm good.
I think we should do the 2-minute. As many QBs as you can name in 2 minutes.
I'm okay with that. And
do not look it up.
I won't look it up, and I'm okay with going back all the way to like 1960 or 70 if you want.
Holy shit!
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay.
That's unbelievable. The stakes are high.
I'm okay with going back to like a Sammy Baugh in the 30s and 40s. Anything post probably the early mid 50s. I'm okay with.
People are gonna really start to appreciate what kind of brand they're dealing with.
And you're coming out my third sport too.
You think basketball is better than football?
Just in terms of one, yes, but 2, what I know trivia wise is like baseball 1, NBA 2, NFL a distant 3rd, but I still feel pretty confident within it.
So just before we go, I just wanted to. What do you think about the Kevin Durant news that kind of broke today? That they're back on.
I would have put money on that if you made me put money on it a few months ago. I would have put money on it. The whole thing's a joke. There's no way he's.
You would have predicted. You were going to predict it. You predicted that.
So after, when it was like a big story, we have like a whiteboard in the gym, and one of us usually puts a question of the day, and I put what team is Kevin Durant going to, and we put like a bunch of teams there, people to vote. I voted Brooklyn. It was the obvious choice. He wasn't going.
Wow.
This whole thing's been a scam.
What was the ultimatum? What was like the motive for it?
I just think he wanted to explore options. He wanted to be like part of this attention that people get in the offseason free agency. He didn't want to be a guy that wasn't talked about this offseason. I think that's the number one reason. He didn't want it to be like, well, LeBron gets his extension and Bradley Beal gets his and Jokic gets his and Karl Anthony Towns gets his and all these guys, Rudy Gobert gets traded, James Harden gets a deal. Like all these guys in the top 25 players in the NBA, like half of them have something happen to them in the offseason. And I think Kevin Durant felt left out. I think he wanted to be part of the news cycle.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's.
I rate. This podcast can come under attack if Kevin Durant hears that.
Hey,
because he hears everything that.
Hey, he knows where to find me. I'm not going to give my address, but if he wants to hear yours, go back to episode 2. Maybe episode 1.
We're going to bleep that out. We're going to bleep that out because you just put a target on our back.
All right. Hey, podcast got to wrap up here, but we'll come back very soon.